Hello, you do not know me, I do not know you, at least probably. But I welcome you here. Hello to this rambling session. This is the second one of these, though no information from the previous one is really required here, don't worry. And if it is, I'll just mention it beforehand. Anyways, so I'm gonna be trying to sound a bit clearer today, fix some of the horrible sound mixing that was in the previous one. But today's topic, aside from voice cracks, is Sonic and the Secret Rings. Now, like I said, this is the second one of these. In the first video, I established that I want to look at the franchise in a more of a unique light and talk about things that nobody talks about, because actual things that are important, like level design and story and all that, has been discussed to death, and if I have something new to add, I will. But for now, I don't really have anything to add to the franchise in the classic games, and we kind of went over Sonic Adventure, Adventure 2, and 06 in that style, and how they have impacted me as kind of a through line between all three games as to how they impacted my life as a whole, even though in the case of 06, I didn't even play the game. But today's topic is Secret Rings, and it's an adaptation of a certain book. I'm not mentioning the name right now because that's a whole discussion of its own, so let's just start with this. So how does Secret Rings adapt the story that it's trying to adapt? Not very well, and by design. This is not like a criticism. It has fucking dinosaurs in stories that take place less than 2,000 years ago, so it's not trying to be accurate whatsoever. And hey, maybe Erazor Djinn really likes dinosaurs, who knows? But yeah, so let's just start with the name of the book, because I find the translations for it very fascinating, because this game is technically a Japanese script translated into English that's translating like Arabic concepts. So there's like 3 layers of bullshit translation going on here. And who knows the target audience and the marketing and all that. So there's like 50 different layers to something like this. So the names are very interesting. And what I find also really interesting is the name. Arabian Nights is what they call the fairy tale collection of the stories of the past. And in case you don't know, the original name for it, the Arabic name for it, is Alf Layla wa Layla, which directly translates to 1001 Nights. And if you're keeping a keen eye, or I guess a keep ear, keen ears, is that a thing? Anyways, if you're keeping a keen ear, you will notice that is the final boss name of Sonic and the Secret Rings. The final boss is called Alf Layla wa Layla. Because he got control of the books, because he got the 7 world rings, which are not a thing in the books, by the way. But yeah, I think that's pretty neat. But the actual name Arabian Nights always bothered me because it doesn't really make sense. First of all, the reason it's called Alf Layla wa Layla, or 1001 Nights, is because it's a collection, essentially, of 1001 stories told every single night for 1001 days. So that's why it's called that. Calling it Arabian Nights completely removes the purpose, and it's also inaccurate, because Arabian Nights are not, the stories in that book are not comprised of just Arabic. There's a lot of Indian stories in that as well. And so it's very fascinating to look at the name because it just doesn't make any sense. I assume like some French colonizer came in. Like from the research I made, it seems like the first time like the more Western world got hands on it was the French, which does line up, but it is kind of weird that they decided to go with Arabian Nights, even though they mainly conquered around Africa, not the I guess the Arabic portions. But it's very fascinating. The title sucks ass, but to Sega's credit, the names they come up with are not bad at all. So let's talk about the main villain of the game. He's called Erazor Djinn, and I actually love that name. Eraser because he erases things. No shit, that's the whole plot of the game. He's erasing the stories of, I guess in the context here, the Arabian Nights. And Jinn actually just means genie in Arabic. This is just a direct world. It's it's a direct world translation. And it's written exactly how you'd expect it to be written. It's very respectful, so shockingly, just very shockingly. It's a perfect name. It just means the genie who erases shit, and it perfectly summarizes his character in 2 words. It keeps the theming, and it's very good, and I like that. And I also like to just keep up with the positives here. I really like the classifications they give to the characters. The guy Knuckles play, well, I'll talk about the name, don't you worry. The guy he plays, he fits, right, because the whole treasure hunter perspective, and he was an adventurer. It lines up perfectly. Then we have Tails and Alibaba. Again, it lines up decently well. There is one part, though, that's really interesting about Levitated Ruins, but I'll get to that later. And then Dr. Eggman, the character he plays, is actually the guy who is indirectly responsible for the creation of that book, because the story goes is the reason these stories were told over 1001 nights is because I think the English term for this is a nobleman's daughter, like the nobleman's daughter. She was apparently gonna get killed, and then to distract the king, she essentially told him a story to keep herself alive. And then the king said, "Well, as long as she keeps telling stories, I will not kill her because I'm very curious." And then she just kept going for 1001 nights. I don't even remember how it ends, but yeah, that's kind of the origin of that. And the king character that Eggman plays is the greedy king who was about to kill that daughter. So having him be the villain is a very clever nod. I like that. The game never points it out. At least I don't think it does. And I just think it's very neat. I like that. And then to move on a bit to kind of a meh thing, it's not really a negative, but the female protagonist next to Sonic the Hedgehog is called Shara. Shara is a very weird name because I don't think it's a name that anybody in history had around that period. Shara, I think it comes from Sarah, and then they just added a "sh" because they just stereotyped. I guess I looked it up. Shara doesn't mean to be a name. The closest thing is Shaida, but that's it's completely different. It's not the same thing, and the way it's spelled and pronounced is completely different. So I don't know what's going on there. My only guess is that this is I don't know, an Indian movie having an American character called Nike, because you just wanted to have a Michael, but then they just didn't get it, so just had Michael. That's my only guess. However, it's kind of innocent enough. It's not really anything. It's quite fascinating actually. Next up on the kind of questionable side, where it's not really anything, but it's kind of a curious thing. From what I looked up, it seems like Skeleton Dome is based off one of the actual stories present in the Arabian Nights. However, it's kind of different because the closest thing that comes to Skeleton Dome with the whole skeleton imagery is takes place in mines and chambers, not the open air, and there was no snow because it just did not snow in these areas. The snow just did not exist in these locations. So that's kind of a creative choice. And no, I've heard some theories about that being skeleton dust. That is not the case. I think every single resource that I found about the creation of this game, which is not a lot, but every single source I found seems to put in mind that this is just snow, right? It's just snow. There's nothing remarkable. It's just snow. But I actually wanted to talk about Levitated Ruin because they try to make a cool thing with it, and then they kind of fail, but it's kind of endearing, so I don't really mind it. It's very cool. It's very neat. Levitated Ruin. It takes place way above the skies, and according to Alibaba, which is the Tails character, it is called a rook or a ruch, I guess, depending on how you spell it and pronounce it. Now, the idea here is that these were just the names in Persian mythology. These were essentially really large birds. But according to the wiki, the Levitated Ruins ones are not giant birds, and instead they're manta-like. That's the description of the wiki of Levitated Ruin, which is, it's interesting, I guess. I just thought it was neat that they actually tried, but then they kind of honestly, I think they probably made up the stage idea and then connected it later on, because they figured having a bunch of generic stages like Pirate Storm and Sand Oasis that are just generic culture things and not relating to the actual Arabian Nights. So I guess they wanted to just have something that connects to it. So I mean, it works. It works well enough, and I appreciate the attempt. But that's where my positives end. Oh, and the way they tell a story, the yellow paper and the ancient things. I dig that. I dig that. But yeah, aside from that, let's go into some more yikes territories. I already said Alibaba. Alibaba is a good name. I forgot. I don't think did I mention him? I don't know. I don't keep up with my yapping, but Alibaba is a very good name. It's written correctly. It's abbreviated correctly. Like everything about it is just flawless. It's good. It's pronounced Alibaba because foreigners can do the Ain sound. That's the same way like Japanese people can do the R sound. It's the exact same thing. So yeah, just like said as Alibaba rather than Alibaba, and yeah, like no shit, they have to, so there's no complaint there. And they also written it with an I, not a Y. I hate the fact that Ali sometimes gets written with a Y. I am not convinced. Anyways, the guy Knuckles plays, he's called in-game Sinbad. I have no idea who the fuck a Sinbad is. His name is Sinbad. This is a very bizarre case of a like an Americanization of a name. I think the other example of this in major history is Yusuf always getting translated to Joseph, which are like the like I don't understand why these things happen throughout history. Like, how did Sinbad get written as Sindbad? How did Yusuf get convinced as Joseph? It is very interesting, and now it reached the point where Sinbad and Sindbad and Yusuf and Joseph are not kind of two different names almost. You know, like I'm not sure if any of you work in those kind of cultures, but if you are in a in that environment where you have like you might actually be in an environment where there's a Joseph and a Yusuf, because these two just kind of spiral together, even though they're supposed to be the same name. And if you look up like ancient text, or not really ancient text, but just like look up history and whatnot, or religious translations, you'll find that they call Yusufs Josephs and Josephs Yusufs, depending on how it goes. And yet you'll just find people who call Yusuf Yusuf and a Joseph, except in historical context. Which is very fascinating, and I never actually realized that was more of a thing until I made research for this. So this was a very fun thing. It's a very fun thing to discover. I fucking hate the fact that we just changed the names just because, like, I don't know, some dumbass colonizer couldn't fucking pronounce it. But moving on from that a bit negative note, let's move on to another very interesting one. Actually, I kind of forgot what I was talking about, so I will just transition from now, and then I'll talk back about something that I hate. But the title of Sinbad, he's called the Adventurer of Adventurers, which is an interesting translation. Because the literal term would be like مغامر مغامرين, or it would just be that. It would just be that. And Adventure of Adventurers is a direct translation of that, but it doesn't really work in the context because of the way we use language, and we kind of use that phrase. For example, like even today, we kind of just say like سواقين, which means the driver of drivers. Now, this doesn't make sense to you, but it just means that he's the greatest driver out of all the drivers. So saying the adventurer of adventurers means that he is the greatest, like, adventurer of the adventurers. I'm not really sure how that... Like, I don't think it makes sense in English, and then they opted to directly translate it, which is very fascinating. Anyways, I actually remembered what I was going to talk about. Aladdin. So Erazor Djinn is based off Aladdin, or I guess what you people call Aladdin. I fucking hate that name. Aladdin is actually supposed to be Alauddin. That Alauddin, these are completely different, because Alauddin is actually in a very similar situation to Alibaba, but they actually translated Alibaba, but then they didn't translate Aladdin. Like, it is very bizarre. So to kind of explain the name, Alauddin is like a first and a last name, by the way. Like, these are two names. That is a full name, and it gets translated into one name, which is very stupid. So it's supposed to be Alauddin. So if you have any exposure to Arabic text or no Arabic friends or whatever, especially in the Muslim places, you will find that a lot of people have L in their names. For example, Abdul Rahman as a quick example. Now that one is interesting because Abdul Rahman is actually technically only one name, even though it's two words. So I'm guessing what happened is that they thought Alauddin worked the same way as like Abdul Rahman, but that's not the way it works, and let me explain why. The reason these names work that way, and this will get slightly religious, but you know, it's fine. That voice crack was insane. Anyways, Abdul Rahman directly translates to Abd. Abd can mean a lot of things. It can mean subject. You can translate it as slave. You can translate it as a like a master and a follower kind of relationship. And Rahman is one of the titles of Allah that we have in Islam. So what this essentially means is that it's just a way of saying follower of God, essentially. Like this is just the way it is, and there's so many ways to say it. The most obvious one is Abdullah, which literally just turns into follower or prayer to, or you could say slave of God. You know, you could say all of these things as translations to that. So if you noticed, they all follow the Abd thing, and then you have the title afterwards. That's why Aladdin doesn't make sense, because they combine it like Abdurrahman and Abdullah, right? Because we also combine these into one word, like it's the one thing. Like if you ever seen in text or anything, it's always just combined into one. The same way like Aladdin is done. But Aladdin is not, like Alauddin is not that. It's just, Alauddin is just a name. Like Alauddin is just like a title. It's not the same thing as a description. It's simply a title. It's like, I don't know, calling a Prince Vegeta, for example, and just writing it down as Prince next and then Vegeta with no spaces, and then call it like Prince Vegeta or something like that, or like it's something stupid like that. You know, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The actual thing is Alauddin, because Ala is its own individual name. Like, you don't call someone Abd because that means you call them a fucking slave, bro. Like, you do not tell anyone that. But Abdul, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So Alauddin. Ala is its own name. I know people who are just called Ala. I called them Ala because that's their name. So and then Ildin is just like it's just a title. Again, Prince Vegeta or Prince of All Saiyans. You don't combine that into one word. You don't say Sonic the Hedgehog as one word. You just say Sonic the Hedgehog. It's Alauddin. El literally means the, and Deen, I guess, could directly translate to religion. So yeah, Aladdin is a very terrible name that kind of misses the point, and is a sign of colonization affecting cultures, which is kind of the theme of this video. Because I think it's kind of fascinating how the most pure media that has no ill intention, it really does show the ill intentions of other people. You know, it's you ever seen like a gag in a show where there is like this innocent character is completely oblivious to something like inappropriate or violent or sexual going around them, and then that only highlights just how fucking weird the situation itself is, and doesn't really like, you don't really feel that the guy not knowing it is pathetic. You just feel like the situation is bad. And that kind of is the way I feel towards Sonic and the Secret Rings. You know, it just the names they come up with are actually, like, they're not bad at all. Again, the idea of the final boss being called Alf Layla wa Layla is very fucking cool. I like Erazor Djinn is a very cool, and Shara is like a very, very innocent name that I genuinely do not mind. Like, who knows how many layers of translation that name went with, and I'm actually shocked Erazor Djinn even made it. Dude, that is actually very fucking cool. But yeah, it just kind of goes to show just how ingrained and accepted the culture is, because again, the title of it is wrong. It's like calling it the Arabian Nights is like combining all the Shakespeare and Sherlock Holmes story, putting them in one book, and then calling them the American calling them the what's a cool name? The American Adventures. Yeah, there you go. That's a good name. Like it's like combining both of these and just saying like, yeah, it's called the American Adventure, guys, which it does a complete disservice and it's completely inaccurate to the content of the stories. And the same thing goes for the Arabian Nights. I really do not like that name. However, to Sega's credit, they actually did a pretty good job with it. Now, of course, as an Arabic person myself, it kind of raises the questions like, what do I feel about it? You know, like honestly, I do think it's very fucking cool. I think it's very rad to see the stories. Some of it I knew when I was younger, some of them I knew from fucking Disney, and especially Aladdin. In fact, I never actually made the connection that Aladdin is called Alauddin. That's how bad that name was. It just makes no sense. But anyways, so seeing these stories in a Sonic the Hedgehog context is very cool. I like them. I like seeing these locations, even a lot of them are quite generic. I like the attempts of research that they did. Erazor Djinn just makes me just smile. You know, it's such a very fun name. It's a very good name, and you know, just seeing a little bit of Arabic make it into the Sonic franchise is very cool, and you know, it's definitely a lot better than their other attempt in Sonic Unleashed. That is that's the next video. Don't you worry about that. But for now, I think Secret Rings does it pretty well. Now, I've seen actually some discussions in some kind of in close circles about this game, though, to kind of wrap this thing up. Is a discussion about whether the making of this game counts as halal or haram. Because of course, you know, there's this whole thing of you know, there's only one God and Allah, and anything else is ilhad, right? Which is true to like, yeah, saying there's different gods is a great sin, uh, and then like the Sonic games kind of conflict with that, and especially Secret Rings because it kind of plays with spirits, especially with Evil Foundry. I think Evil Foundry was kind of the that debated on stage, and so there were discussion about whether playing this, not playing the game, but actually making and giving that and buying that game to your kids. Because the argument that defends games with other mythologies, such as God of War, is that they're mature games. They're made to audiences that are supposed to know what's good for them. Like if you play God of War and then you decide that, oh, there's like the Greek gods are real, like screw Islam, for example, like that is your fault. That is your sin. But then there's the argument of like, okay, but how does that affect, you know, the Sonic series? Very fucking weird question, but yeah, people have talked about this. And you know, the Sonic and the Secret Rings, like, is it okay to buy for your kid? Because there was this whole discussion because the game was bundled with these, like, we used to have these 500 gigabyte like hard drives that had like 50 Wii games on there, like 100 Wii games on there. And because, you know, like I said in the previous video, like every console came home. Actually, did I say this? I don't know. But the point is, every single console came cracked or hacked in some way until the PS4, Xbox One era. And we used to buy games for like $1 a pop. So, and then if you bought like, I guess the equivalent of $50 at the time, you just got 100 games on a hard drive. And then, you know, one of these games was Sonic and the Secret Rings. It was very popular to be included at the time. A lot of people really took issue with the game because it went to so many households. Especially those without like internet, so they couldn't know like, oh, this game actually takes place in the Alf Leila Walena. So that was a very interesting thing to discover. Now, if you may be wondering like, oh, what's your opinion? It's very haram to say my opinion on these things because I don't fucking know. In a situation like this, I just say Allahu Alam and just move on with my life. You know, like it just like I don't know it. I do not think so. But I do not have a definitive answer, and so I will not spread information about that because I generally do not know. But yeah, that was Sonic and the Secret Rings. This video definitely is a lot more focused than the last one, and I hope you guys can see the improvements, I guess. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a good day. Mine was actually kind of ass, but you know, we move. And before we end this, though, I'd like to talk about Sonic the Black Knight really quickly, because it's a good chance. I don't really have nearly the connection with Black Knight as I do with Secret Rings, because, of course, Secret Rings is based off my culture. Black Knight is fucking Britain. Who the fuck cares? Uh, Ooh, that might be holy. God damn, I'm seeing that shit. Should I edit that out? Nah, I won't. I'm gonna be genuine. Do at detriment. Anyways, back to Sonic and the Black Knight. I thought the game was pretty fun. It's pretty good, but I have nothing unique to say about it, so I won't. I think the unique angle about it is playing it when it came out versus now, which the Geek Critique actually has a very good video on that, and I do recommend you guys watch it if you're curious about a different perspective on Sonic and the Black Knight. But yeah, that's it. I think next time we will tackle Sonic Unleashed. I think I have a lot to say about that game. I already mentioned the whole worlds thing and how it represents different cultures. That's a discussion, but also there's the discussion of the actual game, because I have things to talk about Sonic Unleashed that it might actually prove to be rather interesting, that are not just rambling on and on. So yeah, this is a definitely more focused thing. This video is way better than the last one. I'm very proud of myself for that one, and I hope you guys are having a good day, and definitely a better day than I am right now. And yeah, I hope you guys doing good. Keep being safe, keep being good, and I'll see you guys maybe tomorrow, maybe never. Who fucking knows? Goodbye. Why is it not?